let's start with where did the idea come to you? When did it come to you that you wanted to write a book?
So I started journaling, so writing in a journal when I was 14 years old. And I've just always loved to write. I loved writing in my journal about my day. And I still do that. And I've finished over 60 journals now.
Wow.
So I love to journal. But I always have loved writing essays. English was always my favorite subject. And so whenever starting when I was, with my very first essay when I was younger, I always, every time that I would write an essay, I would want to read it to my dad. And so I would come into the kitchen. I'd be like, okay, I just finished. Do you want to hear it? And he'd be like, of course I want to hear it. And so I would read my essay to him. And my dad always, I mean, sometimes I'll be writing an essay about, some random topic, and he will literally
Mhm.
start crying because he's so proud of me.
Oh,
and,
right.
and
Okay.
no, not because it's bad, because he's proud of me.
I was
And
gonna
he
say.
always, and he would always say things. He would be like, "You are just so brilliant, Bailey. Like, I just cannot even imagine being so good at writing." And he really hyped me up way more than what, my seventh grade essays on the Civil War deserved. But he would always just tell me, he'd be like, "You should write a book." And so ever since I was little, when I was, however old you are when you write your first essay, but he would always tell me, he'd be like, "You should write a book. You are just such an amazing writer." And da 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 da. And so that just always was in my mind that I should write a book. And so then eventually, um, I just kind of felt like after I won USA National Teen, I was like, this is probably y'all probably never get a better time than right now to
Yeah.
sit here and just write this book. and, and I'd had the idea in my mind for about a year before I started writing it. Um, and I've always loved goal setting. I've always been
Mhm.
really passionate about setting goals and about teaching people goal setting skills, and also helping people to know that success and failure aren't opposites, but they really do go together. And I kind of use my pageant experience as an example of that, with my 7 years of not winning in the beginning, and then not making top 15 at Miss Tennessee Teen USA, 2 years winning. So I've seen what failure can do and how it can really teach you and push you to grow. And so I feel like there's so many lessons in failure, and that so many people resist failure, and they're like, I can't fail. I only want to do it if I'm going to win. And if I think that there's a chance I'm going to lose, then I'm not even going to try. But I feel like there's so many lessons. There's so much value in failure. And so reframing what we see as failure, and, you know, remembering that just because you lost, just because you didn't accomplish the goal you had set in mind, that doesn't mean that you failed,
Yeah.
because you got closer to something. You got closer to what that goal is, or maybe you found something that really was meant for you all along. Um, and so I think that that's really one of the biggest messages throughout Goals in Action is how to set those goals, but also how to really navigate what happens when they don't happen, and how to use that experience to get you closer to what your purpose really is. So a lot of I actually have excerpts from my journal entries, from like my diaries, if you want to call it that. I feel like that's such a cringy word, so I call them journals, but
Daily
they're diaries.
diaries.
Yeah. So I actually have quite a few excerpts from my journals and diaries in the book. So I think that just kind of adds a little personal touch where people can read what was going through my mind in certain moments. I know the journal entry that I wrote the night before I won Miss Tennessee Teen USA is one of the ones that's in there. There's a lot of them. And the entries that I
Mm.
wrote leading up to USA National Teen, where I was having so much doubt and anxiety, some of those are in there. So it's just I really, my entire heart is is in that book, and so many of my tips and my secrets to success are in there. And I think it's really beneficial for people even who aren't in pageants. And I actually have stories from things like student council and from things that it's not just a pageant book. And so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really wanted it to be able to relate to people of all different walks of life. And there's actually, and I know this really, he's an elderly man, and he actually read the book, and he's like in his 80s, and he read the book, and he said that it changed his whole perspective on things. So even somebody who who has lived way more life than I have and who's probably has a ton of wisdom of his own, was able to gain something from it. And that was one of the biggest compliments that I've gotten on it. Was that
I think I saw he left because there's some reviews on Amazon. I
yes,
think he
he did
left.
leave
Is
a
that
review.
him?
Yes, and I've actually never even met him in person, but he knows my mom, and so that's how he found out about the book.
I'll read it out here so people
Yeah.
watching or listening can. So, as a person in their 80s, I have not seen a book more inspiring and moving, and to think a teenager lived and wrote it. This book belongs to all age groups. It motivates me to pray each day and set my goal. Lord, open doors that I might be a blessing to someone today. Bailey drives home the point that setbacks become comebacks when we trust God through it all. Even our failures lead to better fulfilling God's purpose in our life. Failures are never final. That's apparently on day 14. Thanks, young lady, for having the courage, sacrificial love, and passion to share some of your marvelous life stories. I highly recommend this book to both old and young, poor and wealthy, weak and strong. That's got to feel some kind of way hearing that from an 80-year-old, right?
I actually printed that out because I wanted to be able to keep it forever because it just meant so much to me to hear those things, and from someone who I've never even met in person. He knows my
Mhm.
mom, that really through her work, and so that means a lot to hear. And that was one of my worries with writing a book, and that was kind of something that always stopped me was, well, maybe I don't know enough. What if my
Mhm.
advice and what if my knowledge isn't going to help anybody? What if it's wrong? What if,
Yeah.
all the things that that are mental blockers that keep you from going after something. But every single day it is a devotional, and so it is considered a, religious book. And I really just wanted for God to speak through me. And so every single day before I would sit down and write any of it, I would say a prayer and say that I don't want for it to be just my own words, that I
Mhm.
want every single word that I type to be sealed by God, approved by Him, and for His words to be flowing through me, and for whoever's going to read the book, for something to touch every single person that reads the book. And there were some days that I would have a plan for what I was going to write for a certain
Mhm.
day. And then after I would say that prayer, God would just put me in a different direction and be like, actually, you're going to write about this instead. And
Yeah.
so many of the stories are, I feel like, just really, it's just God was just going through me. And so that's really amazing to be able to know that the book really is, it has God's stamp of approval, because that's what I prayed for throughout the entire thing. So that's what really made me confident in being able to write the book, was knowing that it isn't just my words and it isn't just my thoughts, but that the God of the universe was going through me and giving me inspiration. It's definitely divinely inspired. And so that really means a lot to me, that people
Yeah.
can be inspired by it at all ages.